Sophie Bennett pushed through the wooden door of Page Turner Books, her favorite refuge in downtown Portland. The small bookshop smelled of old paper and fresh coffee, a combination that never failed to calm her racing thoughts. She clutched her worn laptop bag tighter, mentally calculating how many more freelance projects she needed to cover this month's rent. The shop was unusually crowded for a Tuesday morning. Sophie navigated through the narrow aisles toward the small cafe counter at the back, where Mrs. Chen was already preparing her usual order. The elderly woman had memorized Sophie's preference months ago, a simple black coffee that fit her minimal budget. Sophie waved at Mrs. Chen and headed toward her favorite corner table, the one with the best natural light for working. She was so focused on checking her phone for new client messages that she didn't notice the tall man stepping backward from the business section shelf. The collision happened in slow motion. Sophie's shoulder bumped his arm just as he was taking a sip from his cup. Hot coffee erupted from the lid, splashing across his pristine white shirt and what appeared to be an incredibly expensive charcoal suit. Her own coffee, which she hadn't even received yet, seemed irrelevant as she stared in horror at the damage she had caused. "Oh no. Oh no, I'm so sorry," Sophie gasped, grabbing napkins from a nearby table and attempting to dab at the spreading stain. The man caught her wrist gently, stopping her frantic movements. "It's fine," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Really?" Sophie finally looked up at his face. He had dark brown hair, slightly disheveled now, and the most striking green eyes she had ever seen. There was amusement dancing in those eyes rather than the anger she had expected. "It's not fine," Sophie insisted, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "That suit looks like it costs more than my car. I'll pay for the cleaning. Or replacement. Whatever you need." The stranger's lips curved into a slight smile. "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is." Sophie released herself from his gentle grip and dug through her bag for her wallet. Her fingers found the emergency credit card she tried never to use. "Please, I insist." "I wasn't watching where I was going." An unexpected stubbornness. Chen appeared with a handful of towels, clucking sympathetically. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry." "Sophie dear, don't worry, these things happen." Sophie barely registered the name. She was too busy trying to calculate how much a suit like that might cost to clean. $200. $300. Her stomach churned. "Look," the man called Mr. Sterling said, accepting a towel from Mrs. Chen. "Accidents happen. I was the one backing up without looking. If anything, I should apologize to you." "You can't apologize for me running into you," Sophie argued, her stubborn streak emerging despite her mortification. "At least let me buy you a replacement coffee." "I don't need you to buy me coffee. I know you don't need me to. But I want to. Please. It's the least I can do." Something shifted in his expression. He studied her for a long moment, and Sophie found herself unable to look away from those green eyes. "All right," he finally agreed. "But only if you join me. I was about to have a very boring morning reviewing contracts, and you've already made it infinitely more interesting." As Sophie hesitated. She had 3 project deadlines looming and couldn't afford to waste time chatting with strangers, even impossibly handsome ones who were being gracious about ruined designer suits. But something in his smile made her say yes. Coffee and conversation, they settled at a table near the window, both with fresh cups of coffee. Sophie insisted on paying despite his protests. The transaction left her mentally recalculating her grocery budget for the week, but her pride wouldn't let him pay. "I'm Gabriel," he offered, extending his hand across the table. "Sophie." "Sophie Bennett." She shook his hand, trying not to notice how warm his grip was. "I really am sorry about your suit." "I think we've established that," Gabriel replied with that amused smile. "Tell me, do you assault strangers with coffee often, or am I special?" Despite herself, Sophie laughed. "You're very special. First-time coffee assaulter, I promise. I'm honored." Lee back in his chair, looking completely at ease despite the coffee stain spreading across his shirt. "So, Sophie Bennett, what brings you to Page Turner on a Tuesday morning?" "Shouldn't you be at work?" "I am working. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I do most of my work from coffee shops because my apartment is too small and distracting." She gestured at her laptop bag. "What about you? I'm guessing you have an office somewhere, probably with a much better view than this bookshop. A shadow crossed Gabriel's face so quickly Sophie almost missed it. I do have an office. Multiple ones, actually. But sometimes I need to escape the corporate environment. This place reminds me of simpler times. There was a story there. Sophie could sense it, but she didn't push. Instead, they talked about books. Gabriel had been browsing the business section, but his true passion, he confessed, was science fiction. Sophie admitted she preferred historical fiction and contemporary romance. Romance novels? Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Billionaire love stories? Sophie felt her cheeks warm again. Sometimes. Though I find them a bit unrealistic. Real billionaires probably don't have time for grand romantic gestures. You'd be surprised what people make time for when they find something worth pursuing. It was an intensity in Gabriel's gaze that made Sophie's heart skip. The unexpected. Goodbye an hour passed without Sophie noticing. She was so engrossed in their conversation that when her phone alarm chimed, reminding her of a client call, she actually felt disappointed. I have to go, she said reluctantly, gathering her things. I have a call with a potential client in 10 minutes. Gabriel stood as well. It was lovely meeting you, Sophie, even if the circumstances were a bit wet. She laughed, slinging her laptop bag over her shoulder. I promise, if we ever meet again, I'll keep all beverages at a safe distance. I hope we do meet again. Gabriel pulled a business card from his wallet, then hesitated before writing something on the back. My personal number? In case you ever want to discuss the realism of billionaire romance novels over coffee. Sophie accepted the card, glancing at the front. Her eyes widened as she read the embossed text. Sterling Innovations. Chief Executive Officer, Gabriel Sterling. You're not just Mr. Sterling, she said slowly. You're Gabriel Sterling. The Gabriel Sterling. His expression became guarded. Does that change things? Sophie thought about the tech mogul whose company had revolutionized cloud computing, whose name appeared regularly in business journals, whose net worth was rumored to be in the billions. She looked at the coffee stain on his shirt, remembered his easy laugh. The way he had talked about science fiction novels with genuine enthusiasm. No, she decided. It doesn't change anything. Though it does make me feel worse about your suit. His smile returned, genuine and warm. Forget the suit, Sophie. It was worth it. She left the bookshop in a daze, Gabriel's business card burning in her pocket. Only when she was halfway home did she realize she had completely forgotten about her own coffee. The one Mrs. Chen had been preparing when the collision happened. What Sophie didn't know was that Gabriel watched her leave, a small smile playing on his lips. For the first time in years, someone had seen him as just a person, not a walking bank account or business opportunity. And for the first time in years, he found himself hoping that a chance encounter might become something more. But fate, as Sophie would soon discover, had more surprises in store. 3 days after the coffee shop encounter, Sophie sat in her tiny apartment staring at an email that made her heart race. Sterling Innovations was requesting a meeting about a major design project. The coincidence seemed impossible. Nina burst through the door, carrying takeout bags. Please tell me you haven't been staring at that screen all day. Nina, you won't believe this. Sophie turned her laptop around. Remember the guy I told you about? The one whose suit I ruined at the bookshop. The hot stranger who turned out to be a billionaire? Nina set down the food and peered at the screen. What about him? His company just contacted me about a design project. A big one. They want to redesign their entire brand identity for a new product launch. Nina's eyes widened. That's amazing. Wait, is this weird? Do you think he requested you specifically? Sophie had been wondering the same thing. The email came from someone named Thomas Reed, director of marketing, with no mention of Gabriel. But the timing felt too perfect to be coincidence. I don't know, Sophie admitted, but I can't turn down this opportunity. Do you know what a project like this could do for my portfolio? For my career? Then stop overthinking and respond to the email, Nina said practically, opening the takeout containers. Worst case scenario, you get to see the hot billionaire again. Best case, you land the biggest client of your life. Sophie drafted her response 3 times before finally hitting send. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Sterling Innovations headquarters. Entering his world, the Sterling Innovations building dominated the downtown skyline. All glass and steel reaching toward the clouds, Sophie stood on the sidewalk, smoothing down her best blazer, the navy one she saved for important client meetings. Her portfolio bag felt heavy with printed samples, and her tablet loaded with digital work. The lobby was intimidating, filled with modern art and bustling professionals who looked like they belonged in fashion magazines. Sophie checked in at reception, and a young woman with a tablet appeared to escort her upstairs. "Mr. Reed is expecting you," the woman said as they stepped into an elevator with no buttons, only a fingerprint scanner. "He's very excited about this project." They rode up in silence, Sophie's stomach dropping with each floor. The elevator opened directly into a modern office space with floor-to-ceiling windows. Offering a breathtaking view of the city, Thomas Reed stood waiting. A friendly man in his early 40s with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. Sophie Bennett. "Thomas Reed, welcome to Sterling Innovations." They shook hands, and Thomas led her to a sleek conference room. "I've reviewed your portfolio. Your work is exactly what we're looking for. Fresh, innovative, but with a classic sensibility that appeals to a broad audience." Sophie felt herself relax slightly as they discussed the project. Sterling Innovations was launching a new educational technology platform aimed at making coding accessible to underprivileged communities. They wanted branding that felt approachable yet professional, inspiring yet trustworthy. "This sounds incredible," Sophie said, her designer mind already spinning with ideas. "When would you need the initial concepts?" "We're hoping for preliminary designs in 3 weeks. I know that's tight, but this project is important to us. To Gabriel especially." At the mention of his name, Sophie's heart skipped. "Is Mr. Sterling involved in the project directly?" Thomas smiled knowingly. "Gabriel is personally overseeing this initiative. It's a passion project for him. He believes technology education can change lives." Having experienced that transformation himself, before Sophie could respond, the conference room door opened. When professional meets personal, Gabriel walked in, and Sophie's breath caught. He wore a different suit, midnight blue this time, perfectly tailored. His eyes found hers immediately, and that familiar smile curved his lips. "Sophie, what a pleasant surprise." Thomas looked between them with raised eyebrows. "You two know each other?" "We met at a bookshop," Gabriel said smoothly, taking the seat across from Sophie. She made quite an impression. Sophie felt her cheeks warm. "I didn't realize you were behind this meeting." "I wasn't," Gabriel assured her. "Thomas has been searching for the right designer for months. When he showed me your portfolio yesterday, I recognized your name. The selection was entirely based on your merit." There was sincerity in his voice, but Sophie still felt uncertain. Was this really about her work, or was Gabriel trying to see her again? As if reading her thoughts, Thomas interjected. "Sophie, I contacted you before Gabriel saw your portfolio. Your online work spoke for itself. The fact that you two have met is just a fortunate coincidence." The tension in Sophie's shoulders eased. "Thank you for clarifying." They spent the next hour discussing the project in detail. Sophie found herself forgetting her nervousness as she got absorbed in the creative challenge. Gabriel occasionally offered input, his insights showing a deep understanding of both technology and human psychology. "Education changed my life," Gabriel said at one point, his expression serious. "I grew up in a small town with limited resources. A free coding program at the local library gave me the tools to build my first software application. That application became the foundation of this company." Sophie saw him differently then. Not as the polished billionaire from business magazines, but as someone who remembered where he came from and wanted to help others find similar opportunities. Coffee and complications as the meeting concluded. Thomas excused himself to take a phone call. Sophie began packing her materials, acutely aware of Gabriel's presence. "So," he said quietly, "did you think about calling me?" Sophie looked up, meeting his gaze. "Every day. But I talk myself out of it every time." "Why?" "Because you're Gabriel Sterling," she said simply. "And I'm a freelance designer who works from coffee shops because I can't afford proper office space." Our worlds don't exactly align. Gabriel stood, moving closer. What if I don't care about aligning worlds? What if I just want to have coffee with someone who sees me as a person, not a bank account or business opportunity? That's easy to say when you're the one with all the power, Sophie replied, surprising herself with her honesty. You can afford to not care about the difference between us. I can't. Something flickered in Gabriel's expression. Hurt, perhaps. You think I asked Thomas to hire you? No, Sophie said quickly. I believe you when you say my selection was based on merit. But now that I'm working for your company, any personal connection between us becomes complicated. It's only if we let it be. Sophie sighed. Using his first name for the first time since entering the building, I need this project. My rent is 2 months overdue, and my car is making a sound that probably means expensive repairs. I can't risk losing this opportunity because of personal feelings. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I apologize for putting you in an uncomfortable position. The formality in his voice stung more than Sophie expected. I didn't mean to. No, you're being professional, and I respect that. He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. I'm going to recuse myself from direct involvement in this project. Thomas will be your primary contact. That way, there's no conflict of interest. You don't have to do that. I want to. Gabriel's green eyes held hers. This project matters to me, and you're clearly the right person for it. I won't let my personal interest interfere with that. Sophie felt a pang of disappointment, even as she knew this was the right decision. Thank you for understanding, Thomas returned, oblivious to the tension. Sophie, we'll send over the contract by tomorrow. The team is excited to work with you. They shook hands again, and Sophie headed toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, she glanced back. Gabriel stood at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city below. Even from a distance, she could sense the weight he carried. The loneliness of always being seen as Gabriel Sterling, the billionaire, rather than simply Gabriel the person. A message in the night that evening. Sophie sat at her kitchen table reviewing the project notes. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I meant what I said at the bookshop. Meeting you was worth a ruined suit. If circumstances were different, I would pursue this connection. But I respect your boundaries and your career. Good luck with the project. You're going to create something extraordinary. Sophie read the message 3 times, her heart aching. She had made the practical choice, the smart choice. So why did it feel like she had just walked away from something important? Nina found her still sitting there an hour later, staring at her phone. What happened? Nina asked, sliding into the chair across from her. I think I just met someone special, Sophie whispered. And then I pushed him away, because I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that someone like him could never really want someone like me. Scared that if I let myself hope, I'll just end up hurt. Scared that the gap between our worlds is too wide to bridge. Nina reached across the table, squeezing Sophie's hand. Or maybe you're scared because you know he could be the real thing, and that's terrifying. Sophie didn't have an answer. She only knew that as she began sketching designs for the Sterling Innovations project. She kept thinking about green eyes and a smile that made her believe. Just for a moment, that different worlds could align after all. 2 weeks into the project, Sophie had barely slept. Her apartment had transformed into a design studio with sketches and color samples covering every surface. The Sterling Innovations project consumed her thoughts, but not just because of the professional opportunity. Every design choice felt personal because she knew Gabriel cared deeply about this cause. Thomas had been wonderful to work with, providing feedback and resources without micromanaging. But Sophie noticed something strange. Every suggestion Thomas made seemed to align perfectly with ideas she had already considered. It was as if someone who understood her creative process was guiding the feedback. These concepts are brilliant, Thomas said during their second review meeting. Especially this one with the open book transforming into a circuit board. It captures exactly what we're trying to communicate. Sophie smiled, pleased with the recognition. Thank you. I wanted to show that education and technology aren't separate worlds, but connected journeys. Gabriel will love it. Thomas paused, realizing what he had said. I mean, when he sees the final presentation, He's been hands-off as promised, but he'll attend the final pitch meeting. Sophie's stomach fluttered at the thought of presenting to Gabriel. She had not seen him since that day in the conference room, though she thought about him constantly, an unexpected visitor late one Friday evening. Sophie was working at Page Turner Books. Mrs. Chen had given her a key months ago. Knowing Sophie often worked past closing time, the bookshop was quiet and peaceful. It's a perfect environment for finalizing her presentation. She was so focused on her laptop that she didn't hear the door open. Only when a shadow fell across her table did she look up. Startled, Gabriel stood there, looking tired but somehow more real than he had in his corporate office. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, his hair slightly messy as if he had been running his hands through it. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," he said quietly. "Mrs. Chen mentioned you sometimes work here late. I hope I'm not interrupting." Sophie's heart raced. "How did you get in?" "Mrs. Chen gave me a key years ago. I helped her save the bookshop when a developer tried to buy the building." Gabriel gestured to the empty chair. "May I sit?" Sophie nodded, unable to find her voice. Gabriel sat down, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. "I've been staying away like I promised," Gabriel began. "But Thomas keeps showing me your work, and Sophie, it's extraordinary." "You've captured everything I dreamed this project could be." "Thank you," Sophie managed. "That means a lot coming from you. I need to tell you something." Gabriel leaned forward, his expression serious. "I haven't been completely honest with you." Sophie's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "That day we met, it wasn't entirely by chance. I had seen your portfolio online a week earlier. Thomas showed it to me as a potential candidate for this project. When I came to the bookshop that morning, part of me hoped I might run into you. Mrs. Chen had mentioned a young designer who worked here regularly." Sophie felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. "So you knew who I was? When I spilled coffee on you, when we talked about books, all of that was planned?" "No," Gabriel said firmly. "I had seen your work and wanted to meet the person behind it. But everything that happened after you bumped into me was real. Your honesty, your humor, the way you insisted on buying me coffee, even though it clearly stretched your budget. I couldn't have planned any of that." "Why are you telling me this now?" Sophie asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Because I can't keep pretending I don't care about you. Because watching you pour your heart into this project from a distance has been torture. Because I would rather risk everything and tell you the truth than keep hiding behind professional boundaries." The confession. Sophie stood up, needing to move, to think. She walked to the bookshop window, looking out at the empty street. Gabriel followed, but kept his distance, giving her space. "Do you know what it's like?" Sophie said quietly. "To grow up always being the person who doesn't quite fit? Too creative for the corporate world, too practical for the artist community, never quite enough money to stop worrying. And then someone like you walks into my life, and for a moment, I let myself imagine that maybe different worlds can connect." "They can," Gabriel said. "Sophie, I grew up in a town where my family struggled to pay bills. My father worked 3 jobs. My mother cleaned houses. When I got that scholarship to study computer science, people in my town said I was forgetting where I came from. When I built my first successful company, business circles said I didn't belong because I lacked the right connections." Sophie turned to face him, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "I've spent 15 years building Sterling Innovations," Gabriel continued. "I've accumulated wealth I never dreamed possible. But do you know what I discovered? Money doesn't bridge worlds. Connection does. Understanding does. Finding someone who sees you for who you are, not what you have, that's what matters." "Gabriel," Sophie whispered, feeling tears prick her eyes. "When you spilled coffee on me, you didn't see a billionaire. You saw a person whose suit you had ruined, and you insisted on making it right even though it meant sacrificing your grocery budget. That moment mattered more to me than any business deal I've ever closed." Sophie felt something break open inside her, all the fear and doubt she had been carrying. "I pushed you away because I was terrified." "I know. Not terrified of your money or your success. Terrified that I would disappoint you. That eventually you would realize I'm just an ordinary person trying to make it in a city that feels too big and too expensive." Gabriel closed the distance between them, gently taking her hands. Sophie, you are many things, but ordinary is not one of them. The way you see the world, the passion you bring to your work, the kindness you showed a stranger in a bookshop, these qualities have nothing to do with money or status. They're simply who you are. What if this doesn't work? Sophie asked, her voice barely audible. What if it does? A new beginning. Sophie looked into Gabriel's eyes and saw her own hope reflected back. Slowly, she smiled. I've been working on your project every night, putting everything I have into it. Not because Sterling Innovations is paying me, but because I know how much it means to you. I know, Gabriel said softly. Thomas tells me you've refused to cut corners even when it meant working extra hours without additional compensation. That's who you are, Sophie. Someone who cares about making a difference. The final presentation is next week. I'll be there. And afterward, if you're willing, I would like to take you to dinner. Not as CEO and designer, but as Gabriel and Sophie. Two people who met in a bookshop and discovered something worth exploring. Sophie felt her heart expand with possibility. I would like that very much. Gabriel raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. I should let you work. But Sophie, one more thing. Whatever happens with us, your career is yours. This project, your success, that's all because of your talent. I would never take that away from you. I know, Sophie said, and realized she meant it. Gabriel had proven his respect for her boundaries and her professional integrity. After Gabriel left, Sophie returned to her laptop with renewed energy. She worked through the night, refining every detail of her presentation. But now her designs carried something extra. A sense of hope and connection that only comes from truly understanding what you're creating. The presentation the following Thursday. Sophie stood in the Sterling Innovations conference room before a panel of executives. Her hands trembled slightly as she loaded her presentation, but her voice remained steady. Thomas sat at the head of the table. Gabriel sat near the back, his expression neutral and professional, giving nothing away. Sophie began. Education transforms lives by bridging the gap between where we are and where we dream of being. This brand identity celebrates that journey. She revealed each design, explaining the symbolism and strategy behind her choices. She watched the room respond. Executives nodded. Thomas smiled. And Gabriel, when she dared glance his way, looked at her with unmistakable pride. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Thomas stood, shaking her hand enthusiastically. Sophie, this is exactly what we needed. Better than we imagined? Gabriel approached last. In front of the entire team, he extended his hand professionally. Excellent work, Ms. Bennett. Sterling Innovations is fortunate to have found you. But his eyes held a different message, one meant only for her. Tonight, they seemed to say, tonight we begin. That evening, Sophie met Gabriel at a small restaurant far from the corporate towers and fancy venues. It was a neighborhood place with checkered tablecloths and home-style cooking. It's a kind of place where you could talk for hours without feeling rushed. No Italian restaurants with crystal chandeliers. Sophie teased as they settled into a corner booth. Gabriel grinned. I learned my lesson. Sometimes the best moments happen in simple places. They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Gabriel shared stories about learning to code in a library basement. Sophie described her journey from a struggling art student to a designer finding her voice. They discovered shared dreams about using creativity and technology to make the world more accessible. I want to start a foundation, Gabriel confessed over dessert. Not just for education, but supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. People like me who need a chance. That's beautiful, Sophie said. I would love to help design the branding for something like that. Not as a paid project, but as something I believe in. Gabriel reached across the table, taking her hand. I was hoping you would say that. Sophie, I don't know where this goes. I can't promise it will be easy. Our lives are complicated in different ways. But you want to try? More than anything. Sophie squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of rightness settle over her. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. As they left the restaurant, walking through the city's streets side by side, Sophie realized something important. Their different worlds had not needed to align perfectly. They had simply needed two people willing to build a bridge between them. One honest conversation and genuine moment at a time. Gabriel walked her to her car. Before she drove away, he kissed her gently. It was a kiss full of promise, of new beginnings, of two people brave enough to take a chance on something real. "We'll see you tomorrow," Gabriel asked, his forehead resting against hers. "Tomorrow," Sophie agreed. And the day after that, she drove home with a smile on her face. Knowing that sometimes the best stories begin with spilled coffee and end with the courage to believe that love recognizes no boundaries except those we create ourselves,